Good morning. I'm glad you dropped in because today we're going to make a couple of little items I think you'll find very handy. And usually when you're sewing or quilting, you're working with cotton, fleece, flannel. But today, let's do some sewing with a shelf liner or a drawer liner. Yes, I said shelf liner, and it will be very easy to work with. We just make a couple of little adjustments to our machine. Now, the first thing that we're going to make is a little foot pedal stand. Not a stand, a mat, foot pedal mat. You take your foot pedal off your machine, and of course I have my cord keeper on it. I didn't get a snap on this one yet, excuse me, but it's handy. It keeps everything in place. Take your foot pedal for your machine. Just measure the outside perimeter, see what size it is, and cut a piece of shelf liner about 2 inches bigger all the way around, just to give you a little space to work with. So the bottom of your foot pedal plus 2 inches, because they're different sizes, they're not all the same size. When you cut out the piece of your liner, cut 2 pieces, one for either side, and keep in mind that the shelf liner has a slippery side and a rougher side. So make sure your slippery side is on the inside. It's the roughness or the grabbiness, there's no such word I know, that you want to use. So your 2 pieces of shelf liner with the slippery side inside. And this one, I used 2 different weights of shelf liner. This is a little thicker. You don't need that. You don't need the thickness. The other one works just fine. But if this is what you happen to have in your house, go ahead and use it. I tried one of each just to see if one is better than the other. They both work equally well. So your 2 pieces of your shelf liner, and cut it out 2 inches bigger all the way around. I happen to make this sort of oval. Square is just fine. Take a binding, and I used a bias binding on this one only because I have a bit of a curve here, so it'll be easier to work with. Take your bias binding, just set it over the top, pin around, or clip, which is even easier. Clip around, and sew your binding on. Now, when you're sewing with shelf liner, there's a couple of little adjustments to make to your machine or to your sewing. The feed dogs do not like this roughness, and they're not going to try and push it ahead. The feed dogs are to kind of push your fabric ahead a little as you sew. Feed dogs don't like this. It's too hard for them to push. So, across the bottom part of your shelf liner, you can either put tissue paper, and this is saved from interfacing piece. Put tissue paper or a coffee filter. Now, I know a lot of people use the coffee pods now, and you probably don't have filters that you're using in the kitchen, but they're great in your sewing room. So put a coffee filter or a piece of tissue paper, and that'll cover so that the feed dogs will be happier. Now, on the front for your presser foot, you can get a Teflon foot, or you could put a piece of Scotch tape across the bottom of your regular foot and just puncture a little hole for your needle. However, because we're putting the binding around and you're sewing only on the binding, you don't need to adjust your presser foot. You don't need that because you're sewing on the binding only, but the bottom is still exposed to your feed dog, so that's necessary. So you sew all the way around and take your pins out or whatever, and there you have a little mat for the bottom underneath your foot pedal. Because if you've noticed, and it depends on the type of flooring, when you put your foot pedal down, sometimes it decides to go a little here or there and everywhere, and it moves around on you. With this, there's just enough grip there between the two that it stays still and does what it's supposed to do. So that's an easy one and quick and not a lot of measuring. So if the grip was good for your foot pedal, let's go ahead and try something else. So I thought, okay, and this one I used the thicker shelf liner just to test it. But this has fabric on one side and your shelf liner on the other, and it makes a wonderful jar opener. So for this one, the size is about, the shelf liner is about 6 by 6. Cut out one piece of fabric to put behind it, and your fabric will be an inch larger all the way around because you're going to fold it over. And here's a smaller one. Let's look at this one. You cut out your 6 by 6. This isn't, just as an example. Cut out 6 by 6. Make sure your shiny side or your slippery side is towards the wrong side to wrong side, the slippery side to the wrong side of your fabric. Again, this is smaller than you're going to make. I'm just showing you. And put it down with the fabric behind. Now, pin it or clip it to the center. Let's put a pin in here so you can work with it. Put it in the center of your fabric. Now, fold your fabric down once and twice so you have no raw edges. You're starting with the raw edge of the fabric, fold it over once and fold it twice, and you're going to sew across here. Now, do that all the way around, and it's best if you find the center, maybe mark it on the inside of your fabric, and go to the iron and press it down, and then you already, look how easy that's going to be to sew because it's already pressed down, as opposed to these sides that you're going to have to hold in. Pressing really is a big help when you're working with smaller pieces. So you're going to press this down and either pin or clip the sides. Again, you don't have to worry about your press of foot because you're sewing only with the cotton on the outside. The lining is inside, it's not exposed, so you're not touching this liner with your press of foot. And because you're putting the cotton on the back, or whatever fabric you want to choose, your feed dog is not touching the back. So you don't need anything special for one like this. And I say whatever fabric you want to choose because it doesn't have to be your good 100% cotton. You want to use denim, upholstery material, anything. It doesn't have to be 100% cotton. I just happen to have this piece already cut out, and away you go. So you're going to sew all the way around and end up with this. And you can have it to match your kitchen. There's a little bit of grip on this fabric, so I thought I'll try it, and it matched my kitchen, of course, so I like this one. But why don't you try something with the food related? Make some for your friends and have them food related. Put a little hook on it, and you can hang it up with your pot holders or hang it up on the inside of your cupboard so you know exactly where it is when you need it, and you're not looking around in that drawer that has everything in it. So these are nice and neat. Again, there's about 6 inches for your liner. Add an inch all the way around, fold it in twice, and sew on the fabric so you're not ruining anything. I happen to do a zigzag on this one because this is not a fabric you usually sew with, and I didn't know if it might stretch or pull, so the zigzag gives you a little bit of leeway there, and it makes a nice finish to it. So we have a jar opener, we have a foot pedal, and I was thinking a jar opener sometimes would be handy if you're traveling or out for a day trip and you stop to get a bottle of water or juice or pop or whatever. And you know, sometimes they're very hard to open. So if we can have a jar opener, let's have a bottle opener. So it has to open does the screw balls for your water or whatever. Exactly the same way. It's just 3 inches square, and make your fabric on the outside about an inch larger. You don't need quite an inch for this one because you're not, you don't have as much to work with. But it's exactly the same, just kind of a mini version. And it's one that you can drop in your purse, put in your glove compartment. It's always there when you need it, and it works very well. So the other thing that you can use your shelf liner for. We're not going to do dimensions or anything today. If you have a mat for under your sewing machine, and that's just two pieces of fabric together with a pocket along the bottom, and you put your shelf liner on the back, only on the part that is sitting on your table. You don't need it for the part that overhangs the table. And just lay it on the back when you've finished your mat. Before you put your binding on, put the binding over the liner, and therefore it's included within the binding. And when you set it down, it grips the table just enough that it stays still before you set your machine on it, and it doesn't go flying on you. So those are some of the things you can use shelf liners for when you're doing your sewing. Of course, you can always use the rest to line your shelves. Bye for now, and I hope you make a few and are happy with what you made. Thank you.